as you think about preparing, so if someone's taking leave, and I love, Deanna, hearing some of those post leave benefits, but going back a bit to before someone's taking leave, thinking about how you prepare the whole team. So not just that person, but also the rest of the team. So May, do you want to talk about how you've managed that, or you've seen that managed?
Yeah, it's been at least on our legal team. It did start with me, right? Like I looked at my work, my projects, um, and kind of proposed a plan. Whether I need someone to just handle that client, like that business unit generally as the GC of that business unit, or whether I had like long-term compliance audity, type projects like that, where it was in that stage. And then assessing whether I thought it could pause or it had to be something that could continue. And then I sort of just proposed it to my AGC, my manager, and said, this is what I have. This is what I think makes sense, to get her perspective on who could cover, right? Because she's going to have a bigger view, Meredith, probably in your role, your view of your entire team and what their workload is, and then determine whether we need to bring someone in or whether, some things will just take pause and just be shuffled amongst the team. Because our policy is, like 12 weeks, it is very manageable. I don't know what it's like, Deanna, if it's like for 6 months, or maybe, we hear of other companies like Netflix, et cetera, who have a year or more. Maybe that's more difficult. But as far as the pre-work, it started with me, what I thought, and then I kind of proposed it.
Deanna, what are you seeing as far as like a longer tenure and how you fill in and support the rest of the team so that they're not feeling overburdened when that person's out? As far as the length, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, it's a testament to just the close collaboration of our teams just on a normal everyday basis in the course of business, that when a team member does indicate that they will be taking time off for a momentous occasion of a birth or adoption of a child, I think we do try to divide up the work of the person who will be out in a way that it doesn't put a burden on any one particular colleague while that person is out. I think we try to establish a very open line of communication throughout the chain of reporting. And so I think that's been successful for us. And particularly with, I think if you look at the sort of litigation side of legal, sometimes it's a little bit easier to anticipate what the upcoming deadlines are with the litigation schedule in place, a little bit less so perhaps on the corporate side. And so we just try to be very agile and be able to pivot when necessary. But so far we found it's worked so long as we just have open conversation and communication. I think that kind of goes to the earlier point I made about our culture, where I think if we have a very strong collaborative culture where people are open to talking about if they need help, then it helps to make parental leave situations go more smoothly as well.
Yeah. And I think the question often talking about, do you spread work amongst the team? Do you bring someone else in? It's always that question. And there's a lot that can go into it. Like you're both talking about the work, the length. Meredith, I know you've used, so Lawtrades has gotten us all together today. I know this is their bread and butter. And I know you've worked with Lawtrades before. When you are bringing someone in to help out during that period of time, what does that look like from a preparation standpoint? And how do you make that successful in your work there at Stash?
Yeah, I did. I think, I have a small legal team, and the way I approach leave is with a small legal team, you can't just add on to people who are already really close to 100% capacity. So for me, it was really, really important to make sure that the people who were not taking leave on the team weren't just picking up the extra work. Like it takes a lot of looking into the role, what each team member is doing, really trying to estimate like like Deanna was talking about, like what litigation it is coming up. It really takes a lot of planning to try to figure out like what is the scope of that workload and what can we push, what can we not prioritize, what can people who are non-lawyers do? Is there a workflow or a process we can put in place to let HR do some of these things without us for a little bit? So like there's a lot of ways you can get creative. But for me, at some point, I really just needed people to do the work. So I did have some temporary help from a couple folks at Lawtrades. But one came in while I actually was personally on leave, and one came in when a team member went on leave, and the type of person I got in each of those was a little different depending on what was going on at the time, and what we really needed, and whether we needed someone just to, you know, step in for someone and just take over their job, or whether we were shifting work around and shifting off some commercial work to someone who could step in. So I think planning, and really doing the legwork up front to figure out what is, you know, if you are using someone like Lawtrades, like what is the real profile you need, and about how much time do you need? Because the more you can get that fit right from up front, the more successful it's going to be. Also, track the work that it, you know, start tracking, you know, months out from when the person is on leave, what really they're doing, where are the documents, what's the status, who's the outside counsel point, but kind of the same theme, planning so that someone can step into the shoes and be onboarded and also offboarded pretty quickly.